I was filling the water trough beside the barn when I heard the thunderous sound of hooves on the packed earth behind me. There was no time to turn around. A sudden impact to my back slammed me into the wooden wall, and in the next moment I found myself wedged between the rotting planks and two massive horns, which drilled into the wood beside my head with a sickening thud. My heart was pounding so hard it almost leapt out of my chest, and the sharp, acrid scent of a furious animal, mixed with dust and hay, flooded my nostrils. Buck, my bull, the very animal I'd raised from a calf for the past 8 years, stood only inches away. His bulky head with its white spot on the forehead so close that I could feel his hot breath on my face. After what felt like an eternity, Buck pulled back, wrenching his horns from the wood, and I slid, trembling, to the ground. My arms and shoulders burned from scratches and bruises, left by the rough bark and sharp splinters. My left shirt sleeve was torn, and blood seeped from a gash on my elbow. Carefully I glanced at the bull, expecting to see the same anger that nearly cost me my life. Instead, I saw something entirely different: despair, fear, almost a plea in his dark eyes. Buck stood motionless a few feet away, breathing heavily, his sides rising and falling, but his posture held no aggression, only tension, as if he were trying to communicate something. I slowly stood up and began to back away towards the house, keeping my gaze fixed on the bull. Once I reached the porch, I finally took a deep breath, allowing myself to comprehend just how narrowly I had escaped death. But the worst thought hit me. Sandy, my 7-year-old daughter, who ran to the barn every day after school to play with the calves and feed the chickens. I had raised Buck since he was a calf. His massive body, his gentle nature around Sandy, and the way he'd always been so careful not to hurt anyone, had made him an integral part of our lives. To Sandy, he was her big teddy bear. She adored him, bringing him apples and carrots daily, calling him her best friend. And he was always so gentle with her, like a protective older brother. But something had changed. In a split second, Buck had turned on me. At least that's what I thought. The way he had driven me against the barn wall, there was no denying that it was an act of aggression. But after I regained my senses and saw the fear in his eyes, I began to question everything. What if I was wrong? What if Buck wasn't attacking me but trying to save me from something? As I stood there on the porch, I thought about Sandy and her innocent love for the bull. I couldn't risk her safety. If Buck had turned violent, I couldn't allow her to continue playing with him. My mind made a decision before I even had a chance to think it through. I had to get rid of him. I reached for the old hunting rifle my father had passed down to me, loaded both barrels, and stepped back into the barnyard. Buck stood at the same spot, breathing heavily. When he saw me, our eyes met. And for a moment it wasn't fear or anger I saw in his eyes. It was trust. Trust that I had taken away when I decided to sell him off to the slaughterhouse. But how could I kill the animal who had given me everything? I had only one option left: sell him before Sandy could see what had happened, before the truth came out. So I called the only slaughterhouse in town, owned by McKenna, a businessman who bought cattle from all the farmers in the area. He agreed to buy Buck. I didn't have time to think. Time was against me, and Sandy would be home soon. But once the deal was done and Buck was gone, a crushing guilt gnawed at me. I stood there frozen in place, the weight of what I had just done crashing down on me like a tidal wave. The truck had long since disappeared down the dirt road, taking Buck with it. My once faithful bull, the one I had raised from a calf, was now gone, sold off to the slaughterhouse, and I was left to deal with the aftermath of my decision. The barn felt eerily quiet without him. I had spent so many years working with Buck, feeding him, training him, watching him grow into the massive, powerful animal he had become. But now, the silence felt suffocating. It was as if a piece of my life had been ripped away, and I couldn't get it back. I replayed the events of the day in my mind, trying to make sense of what had happened. I had been filling the water trough beside the barn when I heard the thundering sound of hooves behind me. Before I could even turn around, Buck had charged into me, slamming me against the wall of the barn with incredible force. The impact was so sudden, so violent, that it knocked the wind out of me and sent me crashing into the rough wood of the barn. For a few moments I could barely breathe, the sharp pain in my back and chest overwhelming me. When I finally managed to regain my senses, I found myself wedged between the planks of the barn and Buck's massive horns, which had driven into the wood on either side of my head. My heart was racing, and the sharp scent of an angry animal filled the air. Buck, the bull I had raised and cared for all these years, was inches away from me. But something was wrong. Something didn't add up. Instead of the rage I had expected to see in his eyes, I found only fear and desperation. His body was tense, but his gaze was filled with something else, something that made my blood run cold. Was it possible? Could I have misjudged him? For a few long seconds, Buck stood still, his breath hot against my face. Then, slowly, he backed away, pulling his horns from the wood with a low grunt. I slid to the ground, my body shaking from the shock, my arms and shoulders burning with scratches and bruises from the rough bark and splinters. As I sat there, stunned, I watched as Buck stepped back, his massive body moving with an unexpected gentleness. His eyes were still locked on mine, but there was no anger in them. Only something that looked like regret? It was almost as if he was trying to communicate something that I wasn't understanding. I had no idea what to make of it. Was this a warning? A mistake? Buck had been like family to me, and I had never once seen him as anything but a gentle giant, especially around Sandy. But the aggression he had shown, it was uncharacteristic, terrifying, and I couldn't ignore it. I had to make a decision, and quickly. With my heart still pounding, I pushed myself up off the ground and started to back away from him, keeping my eyes on him the entire time. I didn't know what was going on, but I couldn't afford to take any chances. If something had snapped inside of him, if he was no longer safe, I couldn't let him stay on the farm. Not with Sandy running around the barn every day, playing with the calves and feeding the chickens. I rushed into the house and grabbed the old hunting rifle from the top shelf of my closet, the weight of it heavy in my hands. My father had given it to me before he passed, and I had never really had a need to use it, except for the occasional hunting trip. But now I felt as though I had no other choice. I had to protect my family, even if it meant making a difficult decision. I loaded the rifle, my hands shaking with the weight of the decision I was about to make. Buck was still out there, standing in the yard, looking at me as though he were waiting for me to do something. But what? What was I supposed to do? How could I kill the very animal that had been a part of our lives for so long? But as I stepped outside, gun in hand, I knew what had to be done. Sandy was going to come home from school in just a few hours, and I couldn't let her see the bull that had nearly killed me. It wasn't just the risk he posed to me, it was the risk he posed to her. I walked down to the barn, my heart heavy in my chest. Buck was still standing there, his large eyes watching me with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. As I drew closer, he turned his head toward me, and for a moment, it felt like everything was on pause. His eyes locked onto mine, and there was a look there, something I couldn't quite place. I raised the rifle, aiming it at his broad forehead, but my hand wouldn't steady. It trembled uncontrollably, and I realized in that moment that I couldn't do it. I couldn't pull the trigger. I lowered the rifle and wiped my face with my hand, feeling the tears of frustration welling up. What was happening? Why couldn't I make the decision? In the end, I had to face the reality of my situation. If Buck was a danger, I couldn't risk him staying on the farm, but I couldn't bring myself to kill him. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called the slaughterhouse. I knew it was the right thing to do. I couldn't risk Sandy's safety, and Buck's behavior had to be dealt with. An hour later, a truck arrived, and Buck was loaded into it. I watched as the trailer disappeared down the road, a pit forming in my stomach. I had just sent away the animal who had been my companion for years. I tried to tell myself it was for the best, but deep down I knew that something wasn't right. I had just made a mistake that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The rest of the day passed in a blur, the minutes slipping by in a haze of guilt and regret. I told myself that I had done the right thing, that there was no other choice. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the farm, the emptiness of the barn seemed to echo in my soul. Sandy didn't question me when she got home from school. She ran straight to the barn as she always did, her excitement palpable. But when she didn't find Buck there, she came back to the house, a confused look on her face. "Daddy, where's Buck?" she asked, her small voice tinged with concern. "Is he on the back pasture?" I swallowed hard, trying to mask the heaviness in my chest. "I moved him to a different pasture, honey. a quieter one farther away. She seemed to accept that, nodding and running off to play with the other animals in the yard. I watched her, a tight knot forming in my stomach as I realized how easily she trusted me, how easily she believed my lies. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. In my heart, I knew I had made a mistake. I had let fear drive me, and in doing so, I had sent Buck away without ever truly understanding what had happened. I couldn't help but wonder if I had overreacted, if I had let my own fear cloud my judgment. But now it was too late to fix it. As night fell, I sat on the porch, staring out at the dark expanse of the farm. I should have felt relief. I should have felt that I had done the responsible thing by protecting my family. But instead, all I could feel was the gnawing ache of a decision made too hastily. I had raised Buck with love and care, and now I had sent him away, convinced that he was a threat. But what if he wasn't? What if he had been trying to protect me, not harm me? The thought gnawed at me relentlessly, the doubt creeping in like a shadow that refused to let go. It was then that I made a decision. I had to find out the truth. I had to know if Buck had been dangerous or if I had misjudged him. I couldn't live with the uncertainty hanging over me. The guilt was unbearable. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number for McKenna's slaughterhouse, my fingers trembling as I held the device to my ear. After a few rings, a voice answered, a woman's voice, rough with the usual strain of the job. "McKenna's slaughterhouse. How can I help you?" I didn't waste any time. "I need to speak with someone in charge. It's about a bull I sold you earlier today." There was a pause on the other end before the woman replied, "Hold on. I'll connect you with the manager." I waited anxiously, my mind racing. I could hear my heart thudding in my chest, louder than the silence on the line. I had to know if Buck was already gone, if there was any chance I could get him back. The line clicked, and a gruff voice came through. "McKenna here. What's the problem?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "It's about the bull I sold you earlier today. I need to get him back. He wasn't what I thought he was." McKenna's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Mr. Jacobs, I understand you're upset, but the deal is done. The bull is on his way to be processed. There's nothing I can do." "No," I shouted, the desperation creeping into my voice. "You don't understand. I made a mistake. He wasn't violent. He was trying to protect me." There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear McKenna exhaling slowly. "Listen, I can't just stop the process. The animals are already in line to be processed, and it's not as simple as putting a halt to it. Once they're in the system, there's no going back." My chest tightened as I felt my hope slipping away. "How long do I have?" I asked, the words barely escaping my lips. McKenna's voice grew softer. "Your bull is scheduled to be processed within the next hour. I can't stop it, but maybe if you're fast enough you can make it. I'd suggest you hurry." Without another word, I hung up, panic surging through me. I knew I had no time to waste. My mind raced as I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door. As I started my truck and sped toward the slaughterhouse, the weight of my decision settled over me like a cloud. I had made the mistake of selling Buck, and now I was racing against time to undo it. But would it even be possible to fix the damage I had done? I thought of Sandy, her innocent face, and how she would react when she found out the truth. I couldn't let her down. I couldn't let Buck down. The road blurred as I pushed the truck faster, the wheels screeching in protest as I accelerated. The miles seemed to stretch on forever, the clock ticking in my mind with every passing second. And then, just as I thought I might never make it in time, I saw the first sign of the town in the distance. I slammed the gas pedal harder, praying that I wasn't too late. The town was now only a few miles away, and I could feel the pressure building with every second. The sweat on my palms made the steering wheel feel slippery, and my heart pounded relentlessly in my chest. I had never driven so fast in my life, pushing my old truck to its limits, praying that I could get there before Buck met his fate. As I sped down the highway, I passed the familiar landmarks of the small town. Nothing seemed the same now. The quiet streets, the rows of houses, the fields that had once felt like home. Everything seemed distant, as though the world had shifted and I was just trying to catch up. The slaughterhouse was on the outskirts of town, nestled in an industrial area. I had been there before, dropping off cows for McKenna. The smell of blood, the clatter of machines, it was a place I had tried to avoid, knowing what went on inside. But today, it was where I had to go to make things right. As I approached the entrance, I saw the large rusted gates that marked the perimeter of the slaughterhouse. They were open, and I could see a couple of workers moving about, the usual hum of machinery filling the air. My stomach churned as I pulled up to the main building, the realization that I was too late creeping up on me. I didn't even stop to park properly. I slammed the truck into gear and rushed out, running toward the door of the main building. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Had I really lost him? Was there still a chance to save him? The heavy door to the slaughterhouse creaked as I pulled it open, and the harsh smell of disinfectant and raw meat hit me like a punch to the gut. I tried to steady my breath, pushing forward into the dimly lit hallway. The sound of machines grinding, the dull thud of animal hooves on concrete. It was overwhelming, and yet I couldn't stop. I had to find Buck. I heard a voice down the hallway, followed by the sound of footsteps. McKenna emerged from one of the rooms, his broad frame blocking the way. He looked at me with a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Mr. Jacobs," he said in his usual calm tone, "what are you doing here? I told you the deal is done. Your bull is already processed." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "No, you have to stop. I made a mistake. You can't let him go. He wasn't dangerous. He was trying to protect me. You have to give him back." My voice broke, the desperation clear. McKenna's eyes narrowed. He crossed his arms over his chest and sighed deeply. "It's too late, Jacobs. The animals are in line. Once they are in the system, there's no going back. You should have thought about this before you sold him." I felt my knees weaken, and for a moment I thought I might collapse right there. The reality of the situation hit me full force. Buck was gone. I had failed him. But there was a spark of determination inside me. I couldn't give up yet, not without trying everything. "Please," I said, my voice quieter now. "I'll pay more. I'll give you anything. Just let me take him back. I know I messed up, but please don't let him die." McKenna's face softened slightly, but there was still an edge to his demeanor. He glanced at the clock on the wall, then back at me. "I can't just stop the process for you, Jacobs. The animals are already in line, but—" He trailed off, his gaze lingering on my face. "If you're serious about getting him back, I'll give you one chance, but it's going to cost you." I felt a surge of hope mixed with anxiety. "What do you mean? What do I have to do?" $6,000? That's the price," McKenna said flatly. "If you want your bull back, you'll pay that price, no less, or else he's already as good as gone." I swallowed hard, my thoughts racing. I didn't have that kind of money, not by a long shot. But I couldn't just walk away, not now, not after everything. I quickly reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope with the cash that I had gotten from selling Buck in the first place. I counted the bills, $2,000. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed 4,000 more. I searched frantically through my jacket, my pants, my pockets, but there was nothing. I had nothing else. Panic set in. The clock was ticking. I looked back at McKenna, who was watching me closely, waiting for my next move. "You don't have 6,000, do you?" he asked, his voice tinged with smug satisfaction. "It's too bad. You should have thought ahead." But I wasn't ready to give up yet. "I'll trade my truck," I said, my voice shaking. "I'll give you my Ford F-150. It's worth at least 4,000, maybe more. It's old, but it runs. Take it. Take the truck, plus the $2,000. It's everything I have." McKenna looked at me for a long moment, his eyes flicking to the truck outside and back to me. Finally, he nodded. "I'll take your truck, Jacobs, but I'm not taking any less than that. If you want your bull, that's the deal." Without a word, I pulled out the keys and handed them to him, my fingers trembling as I did so. I didn't care about the truck anymore. All I cared about was getting Buck back. The deal was made. McKenna signaled to one of the workers, who headed off to the back, and within moments I saw the familiar shape of Buck being led back toward the holding pens. The worker brought him forward, and when Buck saw me, his dark eyes softened. He stepped toward me, his large head lowering as if recognizing the familiar scent of his old friend. I reached out, touching his massive forehead, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my hand. "I'm sorry, old friend," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I made a mistake and I'm sorry." Buck snorted, nudging me gently with his nose as if to say, "It's all right." I led him out of the slaughterhouse, the truck keys still in McKenna's hand. The road back to the farm felt longer this time, but I didn't care. As long as Buck was with me, I knew everything would be all right. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow across the fields, I walked side by side with Buck, leading him slowly toward the farm. The weight in my chest had lifted, but the guilt still lingered faintly. I had made a mistake, one that could have cost me everything. But somehow, by the grace of whatever force there was in this world, I had been given a second chance to make things right. Walking beside Buck, I couldn't help but think of all the years we had spent together, of the countless hours I had spent caring for him, feeding him, watching him grow from a tiny calf into the massive, powerful animal he was now. He had been my responsibility, my companion, and I had failed him when I sent him away. But in the end, he had saved me. It wasn't aggression that had driven him to slam into me that day. It was fear. Fear for my safety. Fear for something I hadn't even noticed. He had been trying to protect me from the rattlesnake that had been hidden in the grass, poised to strike. He had put his life on the line for me, and I had nearly killed him in return. When we reached the farm, I saw Sandy in the distance, standing by the gate, her small figure silhouetted against the horizon. Her eyes lit up as soon as she saw us, and she ran toward us, her laughter ringing in the air. "Buck, Buck is back," she shouted, her voice full of joy and relief. I watched as Sandy ran to Buck, throwing her arms around his neck, her face buried in his thick coat. The sight of her hugging him, the animal that had nearly been taken from us, brought a lump to my throat. She hadn't lost faith in me, even when I had almost lost faith in myself. "I'm sorry, Sandy," I whispered, almost to myself. "I should have trusted him." Sandy pulled away from Buck and looked up at me with wide eyes, her face full of wonder. "What happened, Daddy? Why is Buck back?" I took a deep breath, crouching down to her level. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing on me. This was my chance to explain, to show her the truth I had almost missed. "Buck saved me, sweetie," I said, my voice soft but steady. "He protected me from something dangerous, a rattlesnake, and I made a big mistake. I thought he was attacking me, but he was just trying to protect me. I was wrong to send him away." Sandy looked at me for a long moment, her big grey eyes searching my face as if trying to understand. Then she smiled, a bright, innocent smile that warmed my heart. "Buck's a hero," she said, her voice full of excitement. "He saved you, Daddy." "Yes, he did," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "He's our hero." Sandy threw her arms around me, hugging me tightly. "I'm so glad he's back." I held her close, feeling the weight of everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. The guilt, the fear, the uncertainty, it all melted away in that moment. I had almost lost Buck, but now he was here, and everything felt right again. Buck, who had been so close to death, now stood in front of us, his massive form a symbol of forgiveness and redemption. I had thought he was the one who needed saving, but in the end, it was me who had been saved. Saved by the very animal I had almost destroyed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. The mistakes I had made, the choices I had regretted, they didn't matter anymore. I had my family, I had Buck, and I had learned something invaluable. Sometimes the most difficult decisions lead us to the greatest lessons, and sometimes it's not the animals we save, it's ourselves. I stood there watching Sandy and Buck together, and for the first time in a long while I felt like I had truly come home.